Oh yeah, okay, so fine. Okay, so you can conceptualize the brain like this. You know, you hear about emotions and motivations, and I'd say, well, those are low resolution boxes. Because it actually turns out that if you look at each of the major motivational systems, and you know, you can argue about what they are, but we can kind of lay them out. Pain is one, that's for sure, that's an old one. Thirst, hunger, sexual drive, defensive aggression, predatory aggression, play, love, pair bonding, what else? And then there's basic emotions, you know those. There's like hope and surprise and joy and fear and disgust, and that's good enough. You get the picture, you know, and you can expand that and contract it depending on how you conceptualize it. And you can say, well, some of those are motivational systems and some of those are emotional systems. And the actual answer to that is, well, not exactly, because that's only a low resolution categorization system. It might be useful to distinguish them from cognitive systems, but the truth of the matter is that each of those systems has its own neurological substrate. And those neurological substrates are not identical. Like, there's some similarities between them, but there's lots of differences. And so some things are more emotion-like, and some things are sort of half like emotions and half like motivations. Anger is sort of like that. And then some things are more pure motivations, because hunger, people don't generally think of that as an emotion. And I think it has to do mostly with the propensity of the underlying system to establish an entire framework of reference. So hunger will do that. Anger will do that. Thirst will do that. Sexual drives will do that. Like, they come up, there's a personality associated with them. It wants something, it sees the world in that manner, it primes a certain class of behaviors that are associated with that, and it runs like a partial personality. But then something like fear seems to be more something that exists and operates within a framework rather than producing its own framework. So it doesn't matter. The point is, there's a lot of these underlying systems, and they have the capacity to set up these frameworks of reference that we're talking about and to run them as processes. Yeah, and the reason I said they're stable is because the deeper you'd go down into the brain, the older the brain part is. And the hypothalamus, it's really, really old. And it's so powerful that if you take your whole brain off, except for the hypothalamus and the spinal cord, which leaves you with like no brain at all. If you're a cat, which is a pretty complicated thing, and you're female, you can still pretty much exist. So if you put a female cat in a box, and you take its brain off, including even the emotional sectors, and you just leave it with the hypothalamus, if you watch the cat, it can't handle novel environments, obviously, because it can't really learn. But it can do cat things, no problem. It can feed itself, it can engage in defensive aggression, it can mate, it can generally interact with its kittens. And one of the weird things is, this is so funny, a cat with no brain is hyper-exploratory. It's like you think, what the hell? It's like, you think it'd be the brain that's doing the exploring. It's like, no, it's the hypothalamus that's motivating the exploring. The brain stores the results of the exploring and shuts the exploration off. So if you take the brain off, then the cat just runs around trying to learn things, but it can't because it doesn't remember anything. So, but it's quite fascinating because, you know, we tend to think of the top part of the brain as so bloody important. It's like, no.
So what part of the cat's brain is decorticalized?
Is what?
Decorticalized.
You take the whole cortical cap off and almost all the emotional systems, like 85% of the brain.
So there's no visual cortex?
No.
No motor cortex?
Yes, no motor cortex. It's running on reflex. If you're interested, I actually have some diagrams of it, but look up decorticate cat. You know, you can, there's lots of...
Don't go under images.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, people have done a lot of experiments on animals and their neurological function. And one of the things they were interested in is, well, how much brain can you remove and still have a functioning animal? And the answer is, pretty much all of it. And that's like, well, who the hell would possibly... And if you're interested in that, I would read Swanson again. And I'm sure that paper's on the websites. That Swanson paper, man, that's a work of genius, that thing. Oh, because their male sexual behavior is harder to organize. And so decorticate males can't mate. So if you ever meet a male who can't mate, then, you know, anyways. Sorry. But that's the reason, is that there's certain elements of male sexual behavior that require more complex organization. So that's one thing a decorticate male can't do. So it's easier to distinguish them from females, from the female cats. That's the only reason.